Well, I remember that first year I was actually debating somehow getting into hunting for a living. I wasn't sure how that would work. I remember some of my professors saying, that is not a career path. That is not a way to make a living. But I was smart enough to realize, you know what, here, just give me the skills I need. I'll take it from there. I don't need you to believe that this is going to work. I wanted to learn to be an editor, to learn to film. I wanted to learn to produce, to write. They were basically telling me that's not going to work. When I graduated, I was set on, I'm going to make it somehow. I went out and I believe I sent out 74 resume reels. They were back on a VHS tape, all my best stuff strung together. And I got 74 no's. And I remember thinking, oh, what have I done? Maybe they were right. Like, I just graduated. I was part of the honors program, great grades. Thought I could go out and I'll have so many job opportunities. I'll get to pick whatever I want to do. And I didn't even get one.
Welcome to the Winchester Life Podcast. Through insider access to industry pioneers, firsthand looks at cutting-edge tech advancements, and the stories behind the scenes that have shaped the world of shooting sports and hunting as we know it, we'll dive into the sacred places like deer camps and duck blinds, talk about innovation and shooting tips with the world's best, while revisiting age-old traditions of hunting and shooting still alive in our country. I'm your host, Jason Brown, and welcome to the show. The Winchester Life Podcast is brought to you by Winchester Ammunition, Winchester Repeating Arms, Winchester Safes, White Flyer Targets, Folds of Honor, Birchwood Casey, Walkers, Winchester Pet, and Winchester Optics. For nearly 2 decades, Melissa Bachman has been the standard. Entering the outdoor industry landscape at its peak in 2006, Melissa had her sights set on the big things. And in her own words, I just want to hunt every day. Before that, she was a girl from Minnesota who grew up in the outdoors with a family who embraced the hunting lifestyle. So much so that during her high school years, her parents would sign a work permit so she could start school after her morning hunts. With a dogged mindset and determination that would later in her career power her up mountains, Melissa broke through first as a camera operator and editor for North American Hunter. In 2010, Melissa founded her own production company, Deadly Passions Productions, where she would launch the self-produced and hosted Winchester's Deadly Passions television series to millions. Hunting everything from gobblers to mountain goats, Melissa quickly became known for her grit and determination, her authenticity, and deep knowledge of hunting and shooting sports. But the road wasn't always smooth. In 2012 and 13, Melissa faced national criticism from the anti-hunting community for her hunting lifestyle that would ultimately eliminate her from an opportunity to participate as a contestant at Nat Geo's Ultimate Survival Alaska. And a year later, an African hunt drew more anti-hunting outrage. Just bumps in the road, though, for Melissa, as she stood tall for her hunting heritage and continued to lean in and carve her path forward in the industry. As a longtime Team Winchester ambassador for over 15 years, Melissa most recently received the Winchester Legend Award for her commitment as a mentor and role model for hunters and sport shooters worldwide through her published articles, television series, and local outreach. An award-winning host, a business owner, a producer, an editor, a writer, and a cinematographer, Melissa has been all over the world telling stories and is truly a unicorn in the outdoor industry. Hello and welcome to the Winchester Life Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Brown. Melissa Bachman, thank you so much. You are the official first guest of the Winchester Life Podcast.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I sure appreciate it and feel pretty special getting to be the first one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've been a part of the brand for a long time. But, I want to jump right into just your upbringing. I mean, you're a Minnesota-born, family, was all about the outdoors. Talk a little bit about your upbringing and how that influenced, your career.
I think I was really fortunate because both my mom and my dad hunted. They always joked around that the reason they brought us is they didn't want to pay for a babysitter, so they would bring us in the field with them. But we hunted public land. We'd go out duck hunting on the weekends. We had a little land behind our house. We'd deer hunt together. And it was just something we always did together. It was never really a question. And not only the hunting part, but let's say my mom went out and shot a deer. We'd all go and track it, and then we would all help process the deer and package it, from as little as I can remember. So it wasn't like I just got brought into just the little bit of hunting. It was kind of the entire thing, and I just loved it so much. But in Minnesota, you couldn't hunt till you were 12. So that longing and that waiting until you were 12 years old, I mean, I think you can relate. When did you get to start hunting?
It was 12. Michigan was 12 total, and 14 for anything with a rifle.
So, that's a long time to wait. So I still remember before I was 12, I was like drawing maps as to where I was telling my dad we need to start hunting first and where we would go next. And I still remember thinking, boy, I wonder what my dad was thinking about that as 12-year-olds, like drawing maps where we need to go. But it just kind of shows you that love and the passion for it. And, as I got older, I just loved to hunt. My parents actually signed a work permit for me. So my senior year, I had good enough grades. I didn't have to go to school for the first 2 hours. And I got to hunt every morning before school. And if I got something, I just had to be at school by noon and have it hanging in the garage. So I think it kind of is something that I just loved and longed for, but I'm just so thankful now that they do allow kids to get started a little earlier, because I always fear that by 12, you've lost a lot of kids along the way as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I think back to those days, there's always those memories, those early memories. When you go back and think about, your pre-12 or, your teenage years, is there a certain memory or a certain hunt that you think back to and you just go, man, that was the hunt, that was the one that hooked me, or that was the best memory I had growing up?
I think there was a lot of them, but I shot a buck. It was I'd say maybe 100-inch deer, right? And I remember shooting it and getting up to it. And I remember thinking, I'll probably never get a buck bigger than this for the rest of my life. Like, this is such a giant. I was so proud. My dad actually let me bring it to school. So at lunch, I got to show everybody, and they came out of the lunchroom to look at this buck in the bed of the truck. But to me, that was just such an amazing experience. And I had worked so hard for it. And I truly thought that might be as good as it gets, and I think what it did is it just really got me where I've learned that, there's things that you can do differently. We did a lot of deer drives. We did a lot of sitting. Now my favorite thing is decoying, rattling, making things interactive. And I never did a single part of that younger. But again, the way we did it, it was enough to get me hooked in. And I think that's what's important. And I think you're always developing and growing. And still to this day, one of my favorite parts is traveling around and learning things from other people, because you're always picking up things that maybe someone in Michigan does that I haven't seen before, or Canada, or, different locations. So I think that's a huge part of it, that as hunters, we're always learning.
Yeah, I mean, and you've been to so many places, and we'll get into some of that later, but I think what is unique in the places that we've been able to, over our careers, your career, my career, see, that has a huge influence on the person you become, but also the outdoorsman, the hunter that you become down the road, and what you have in your, tool belt to kind of pass on to the next generation. I know you have, family, and that's important to you as well. But yeah, I think that's, you really hit on something there, is like you always are learning the places you go and from the people you meet along the way. So high school, if you had to be in by noon, you had to make good shots, of course, on these on these deer, which is a good lesson early on. Talk a little bit, 2002, St. Cloud State, you start as a freshman there. Talk a little bit. I know you did track and some different things. Talk a little bit about your college career and how you kind of honed your way into what you eventually wanted to do for your career.
Well, I remember that first year I was actually debating somehow getting into hunting for a living. I wasn't sure how that would work, or I was going to be an anesthesiologist. two very different career paths. And I even look back on it now every once in a while and laugh. Like if my bank account's about ready to go in the red, I'm like, boy, I should have been an anesthesiologist. But there's many different things. But as I look down that career path, I remember some of my professors saying, that is not a career path. That is not a way to make a living. But I was smart enough to realize, you know what, here, just give me the skills I need. I'll take it from there. I don't need you to believe that this is going to work. I wanted to learn to be an editor, to learn to film. I wanted to learn to produce, to write, to do all these things, because one thing I've learned in hunting, which has been so important in my career as well, is you have to be adaptable. The weather can turn and you're out there hunting, you've got to make the best of it. And same with your career. Things change. I mean, we've seen a lot of changes along the way. So you're always having to kind of move and do things different. So when I first got into it, they were basically telling me that's not going to work. When I graduated, I was set on, I'm going to make it somehow. I went out and I believe I sent out 74 resume reels. They were back on a VHS tape, all my best stuff strung together. And I got 74 no's. And I remember thinking, oh, what have I done? Maybe they were right. Like I just graduated. I was part of the honors program, great grades. Thought I could go out and I'll have so many job opportunities. I'll get to pick whatever I want to do. And I didn't even get one. So I thought, well, here we go again. We need to adapt. So I called, it was the North American Hunting Club. They were kind of like first on my list. And I said, I know you didn't hire me, but what about if I come and I work for free? Because then I can get the experience that's needed. What do you think about that? And they're like, well, what can you do? And I said, I can do anything. I can mop the floors. I can log tapes. I can help with whatever you need. And they said, well, great. When can you start? And I said, I'll be there tomorrow. So I started driving 150 miles a day, every single day back and forth to go work for this job for free. And I believe after 4 months, I guilted them into it. And they hired me as the full-time producer position that I originally applied for. So I was able to work there as a producer for 4 years. And, I feel so fortunate to be able to work with people who helped me along the way. Because you can only learn so much in college. You need that real world experience. And, I just worked my butt off. And my whole thing is I'm just going to guilt people into it. I'm going to work so hard that they're like, we got to help this girl. We feel bad for her. And that was kind of my approach is, I'm not going to be the best hunter, the best producer, editor, but I'll outwork anybody else. If I don't quit, hopefully it'll help me along the way. So that's kind of been my motto from day one.
Yeah, I mean, and that's carried you throughout your career, and now you're where you are. But you look back in college, and it's funny how similar our stories are. I got a broadcast journalism degree. I also wrote all my journalism papers were about the outdoors. I produced a show in college, and it's the same thing. All my teachers said, "What are you doing? Like this? There's no future in outdoor production." But there was, and just like you, I believed there was. And it's funny how when you have that much belief in yourself and you will accept nothing but nothing but what you want to achieve in the future, that it happens. It happens. I admire that about you and your ability to just put your head down and work your butt off. And that's been a trademark of yours throughout your whole career. And, it really got you. It's interesting, in 2006, kind of when you broke into the industry, I guess, I was already in the industry, but it was an interesting place. Talk about what it was like 20 years ago, 18 years ago. The industry was very different. It was the television industry had just really started to pick up momentum. The TV shows, Lee and Tiff, Waddell, Road Trips, all, they started to really gain momentum. Talk about how the industry was kind of different back then and how it's kind of changed over the last 15 years.
Well, the number one I think about is the size and weight of production gear. Batteries, the length of battery time. I mean, a lot of our HD cams, they'd last 30 minutes. And you had big tapes that only were, 30, 40 minutes. So I think that's a benefit, that the equipment has absolutely improved. And luckily, I was in really good shape from being in track, because as a cameraman, boy, I needed it, because I was filming other people and I had to pack all that gear. and it was really heavy and very difficult. And, it was one of those things where that was just as much of a challenge, but I was always trying to learn, better ways to do things filming, and then also watching the hunters, because I hadn't really traveled and done that much hunting on my own. So as I'm filming these, I'm just trying to soak everything in as far as the hunting aspects too, because, I grew up in Minnesota. We didn't travel to go hunting places. I really didn't know much about it. I just had that love for the outdoors. So I think that has kind of changed a lot too. And, I'm very thankful, especially when we used to have to put tree arms up, how heavy your gear was on a tree arm. It made it very challenging. I still remember this day. I got to a set once and I forgot the bottom of the tripod. So I had to sit there in a tree arm all day, and I didn't want to say anything that I forgot it. So I held my hand on it to hold that tripod tight to the bowl. And I sat there and I filmed and I never said a word, but you couldn't relax. But you learn real quickly. You don't make that mistake twice. But I think that's one of the main things. I'm sure you can relate. You know how heavy that gear was in the beginning.
Oh, it still is. I feel like, you pull up a pack and it's like a 45-pound pack, and you got to make sure you get the big rope, the little rope. You can't even hardly like dental floss pulling that stuff up. And yeah, it's ridiculous, the amount of stuff. And then, over the last couple of years, we've done some self-filming, and that just adds, there's so much gear when you self-film. It's like, we're not doing this anymore. It's too much work. It's tough. But yeah, it's changed so much over the years, especially with the gear and the equipment. But as you got through college, your first 4 years, in 2010, I believe, you founded Deadly Passions Productions and started your own television series. And, business owner, editor, producer, shooter, there's a lot of things in this industry that a lot of hats you have to wear. But you are truly a unicorn in this industry. You've done it all. And it's not easy to be able to wear all those hats. You're calling on sponsors. You're setting up hunts. You're paying cameramen. Like, it's literally nonstop. And you're still doing it, and you're crushing it. Talk a little bit about what it was like when you first started running your operation, your production company.
Well, I think the hardest part is having the money. I didn't have someone funding me. So when I went out looking for sponsors, not a single sponsor wants you unless you know when your airtime is, right? They want to know you're a for sure deal. Well, guess what? In order to get airtime, you got to have money to pay for it. And if I don't have any sponsors, it's like, well, now what do I do? So when I signed my airtime, I put my house up for it. If it didn't work out, they were going to be able to take my house. And I thought, oh my goodness, you want to learn to be a good salesman quickly? Put your house on the line. And I'm like, well, other than that, I'll have maybe a truck that's not paid for that I can sleep in, but they'll probably take that. So that kind of made it where we really need to get the sponsorship thing moving. So that was the first challenge, is the order of events, to get them in the correct order. So I did it, and I had some great mentors along the way who kind of gave me ideas. And I remember at the very beginning, I bought all the ad inventory in my show. And I was told by a mentor, do not do that. And I said, oh no, I'm going to sell it. And I did not. And then I was offered like 10 cents on the dollar for it back. And I'm thinking, that was a big mistake I made. Now, to this day, I buy very small amounts and add as I need it. But that was a learning experience. And, when you've got to be, like you said, I'm doing the booking for travel, I'm editing. I remember being on elk hunts and bringing my entire editing setup with me on an elk hunt, getting back, you're extremely tired from hunting, and editing till 3 a.m, getting up after an hour of sleep, and then trying to hunt, because I didn't have money to hire anybody to do any of those jobs. I had to do them myself. And I think there's good and bad parts to it. I like knowing all the parts. But yeah, if I had money, I'd have hired some of that stuff out. But I saw something the other day. It said something about, to be able to work, everyone says work smarter, not harder. But you have to learn how to be smart. And I don't think you learn that until you've put in like an astronomical amount of time doing things the wrong way. And I think you can relate because, I'm so much more efficient now. I look back as to, what I had to do those first years. I'm like, I could do that in my sleep now. I've got 50 other things on the docket now. But in those days, it took everything I had. So I think we're all trying to learn to be more efficient and to be better at balancing things. I'm still not great at that, but we're always trying to do better on that front.
100%. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and back in the early 2000s, we had tapes, man. So we had to sit there and ingest, digitize analog footage. And if you had 30 hours of tape, you sat there for 30 hours until it was in. And there's a lot of things that can speed up the process now on the production side, which I thank God for, because back in the day, it was a cumbersome deal. And I remember the ATA show. This would have been 2012's ATA show. We were the first season had dropped. We were editing, and I was editing. Episode 2 needed to hit the network like the next Wednesday, so I literally was editing dropped at the ATA show, season 1. I mean, what an idiot. It's like, but you had to do, like, we were selling sponsorships, we were selling, commercial whatever we were trying to do at that show, we had to be there. So yeah, you learn and you get great people to help you along the way, and that's all part of it, and so as you kind of progress, 2010, you get the company up and running. 2012, I believe, is that when your series started, that Winchester Deadly Passions. In that same year, you had, some anti-hunting stuff happen. Tell me a little bit about that, because I wasn't familiar with that until I read a little bit up on it. And, it's one of those classic anti-hunting community things. What happened with that?
Yeah, so I had gone over. I was actually still with North American at the time. I was starting my own company. They let me have the show, and they offered me a lion hunt over there. And I thought, wow, that would be a really neat episode to go to. We went, did the hunt. Honestly, never thought anything of it. This was before there were ever any controversies surrounding a lion. Did it, came home. Once I got home, I posted a picture. This was right when Twitter was just starting. Posted it, and all of a sudden, it just goes nuts. Ricky Gervais had taken it and made some derogatory remarks about it, passed it on to Steve Carell. The next thing I know, it's on the Jay Leno show. It's on the Weather Channel. I'm hunting, and I'm just being attacked left and right. And I was so blown away by it because, one, I did not expect it. But then I also saw what I think bothered me the most was almost a divide within our own hunting community. And I think that's what kind of bothered me the most. The anti-hunters, they come in droves and they attack and they say awful things. And part of it, I've always believed they attack women a little bit more. And one of the reasons is because I feel like their entire campaign has always been with women or people like Pamela Anderson or, all these people trying to make hunters look like these bad people. Well, now we're getting women, we're getting families involved, and it's almost destroying their whole marketing campaign. So in my mind, I feel like they have to attack extra hard because we're getting close to like making a difference. I mean, they realize that if all of a sudden women and families, you've got the entire organic food push, if we can get a whole nother sector of society on board with hunting, that's going to go against them. So I feel like they attack extra hard. But what I found out is, there's the meat hunting versus trophy hunting. There's all these different divides within our hunting community. And not only does that hurt probably the most when you get grief from other hunters, but I feel like the anti-hunters are pretty smart and they see those cracks within our infrastructure and then they try to exploit that. And that's one of the things they did is try to exploit the lying as just this big trophy hunt and all this. So it was difficult. It was something I never expected. I think it made me stronger in the end. I've probably got the thickest skin of anyone you can find, partially from being a cameraman for years. I'm trying to be very nice to anyone who films me because I've been on the other end of not such nice people sometimes. But I think all of that it's a character building thing. And I think sometimes people will see that and I try to be a good person for the industry and I try to show young women and new people coming in that you can go out there, you can be strong, and even if they attack you, you can overcome it. And I hope that's kind of the story it shows is I hope out of all the negative, maybe it inspired, 30 new people to get started. And that may have never done it had it not got that exposure. So I always try to look at things in the positive way and think, you know what, in the end, it made me stronger and hopefully got more people involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. that whole story is wild, but it's not unique, in the industry. They try to find those cracks, and it's almost Hollywood. If you've ever seen hunters portrayed in a Hollywood film, 99% of the time they come off as doofuses and unsafe, and it drives me nuts, because even when they try to pull off an authentic hunt, things are wrong. All sorts of aspects of the hunt aren't correct. It's like, call one of us. We'll go on your set and we'll make sure it's an authentic hunting scene. But totally get the way it's tried to be positioned by the anti hunting organizations. So I want to spin this. Your hunting seasons, I know, are crazy, because I see a lot of the footage you send in for Winchester, whether it's some product stuff we're doing or whether we use one of your hunts for a Winchester Life television episode. But walk us through a typical fall in what it looks like for you, as far as planning, as far as your hunts, and what you try to accomplish in a short 5-month window.
One of the biggest challenges, it's just me. So I don't have a team of people. It's just me. So if I need to get, or my goal is to get 20 episodes a year, that means I have to book way more than 20 hunts, because not everything's successful. Some years are great, but you have to account for the average rate of return on shows. And for me, if I don't get something, a lot of times it's not a show. So I really need to properly prepare for that. And for many years, I think 6 years in a row, I traveled almost 320 days a year. That is so much. And it's one of those deals, again, where you got to work smarter, not harder. I didn't know how. I was just spinning my wheels, just trying to do every hunt possible. But what I learned is, you almost need to take a step back and start looking at where is the highest percentage time I can go to do this hunt. That doesn't mean it's going to work, but you have to be smart about it. So now I've changed the way I do hunts a little bit. Plus, I have a family, so I don't want to be gone anywhere close to 320 days a year anymore. So now I usually start in August. I head up to Alberta. I go to Colorado. I have several good velvet mule deer hunts in a row. Then I'll try to get elk or moose right after that. And then I try to kind of take October to regroup. Sometimes I'll do a hunt early in October, but I've just found it's probably one of the lowest percentage times for killing good whitetails. And I have to have a break. I have to get home. I have to edit. I have to get things done. I need to see my family. So I've just learned, by taking that breath, you're not as tired for November. Because otherwise what happens is, when you start in August, you're so exhausted by November when the rut is on, that you almost don't have the energy to keep up with what you need. So I found that I'm more effective if I take a little breather in the middle, and then when November hits, I'm gone every day. Into December, I take a little break for Christmas, and then I hit it hard again in January. I've always been a big late season person, and I found that to be really helpful. I think that those little pauses really do help. Now, again, like last night, I was hunting because I've got a big buck on camera that happens to be daylighting, and I'm going to try to get him, but I'm not planning big, long trips during October. I'm trying to have that break, and then when November comes, I've got more tags than I have time for, but I'll just go from one to the next as hunts are successful. And sometimes if they're not, then you stay and finish it out. But I've had it where I think at the best I've ever done, I've killed 4 bucks over 150 in a 7-day period in November. And that's not getting much sleep. It's going from one state to the next. My truck looked like a disaster. All my gear is run down and broke. But you do those things, and you got to have the energy to be able to make that happen when the times are good. So that's kind of how I run it now. And then always looking for hunts outside of that main window, whether it's New Zealand, whether it's, different locations. Alaska, I'm going for spring bear this year. Just finding things that aren't in that heart of your hunting season.
Yeah. And so where are you going for your spring bear hunt this coming year?
I will go to Prince of Wales Island up in Alaska. It's probably my favorite place to go. They switched it to a draw. I used to do it every year. I'd go up there and predator call these black bears in the spring, and it was so much fun. And it's a hunt that I do myself. I just hire a pilot to drop me in. I have a kayak, I set up and do it all on my own. Well, now they changed it. So now you have to either draw or have an outfitter, and it's made it a lot more expensive and a lot more challenging too. But this year I drew, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And I think I might have seen some footage of you in Prince of Wales, Predator Calling. There was some crazy looking guy that was your guy. Was he a guide, or you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. I drew that year, and he had a little cabin. He was friends with someone from a call company I knew, and I ended up just going up and meeting up with him. And he was just a local. You almost, yeah, he really was. But you almost need someone who has either a boat or the kayaks. You got to hook up with someone from there to make it a little better. But I don't need a guide per se if you draw, or, on each setup is different. But it does make it really fun. And like I said, it used to be where it was just a shuttle service that they'd bring you in. That was legal. And it was my favorite because I don't need someone holding my hand there. I just need to get into the location I need to be in. I'll take it from there.
Yeah, we just did. We went to Kodiak here a couple weeks ago for the first time, and we had a transporter kind of, take us to the island, and we hunted blacktail, and it was cool. It was a unique experience, and we've always went up into the Great North, the Arctic Circle, and done a lot of stuff up there. We've never done anything on Kodiak Island, and I know you have a number of times. I believe you've been there. It's just a cool place. Whales everywhere. Just the wildlife and the sea all coming together. Catching giant fish. It is really, it's Mother Nature everywhere you look, and it's a unique place.
Yeah, I love it up there. And plus, when you're filming, you know what it's like. Everywhere you point your camera, you're like, oh, this is amazing. There's wildlife. There's, hey, that's where we need to book things like that all the time.
100%. So you talked about family. Jax, is he 6 now? 5, 6, 7?
Yes. He's 6.
Yeah. The kid is the most unique little guy I think I've ever seen. And it's really cool, some of the things that you guys are doing. You go on hunts with him, you and your husband, and talk a little bit about getting him involved into the outdoors at a young age like he is, and of course you'd have it no other way, but talk a little bit about some of the most memorable things you guys have done together.
Yeah, since he was born, we've always, with all our kids, we've got 3 older kids. We don't want to push anybody to hunt or to be outdoors. I just want it to be available. Every kid's going to be different, and they've all hunted. Sometimes they want to, sometimes they don't, no big deal. Well, when Jax came around, he just came along with us, and he just ate it up and loved it. And Jax's personality, since he was 2 years old, has been a natural born entertainer. I don't think there's any better way to explain him. That's just what he does. And it's not necessarily just with hunting. It's with working out. It's with dressing up for whatever we're doing. We took him to Sturgis, and he's got the whole outfit on, and he was like a celebrity out in Sturgis. We have so much fun. But my goal with him is to make him as well-rounded of a kid as possible. I don't want to push him in any direction, whether it's sports, whatever. He loves it all, and I try to make sure he can experience it all, so then he can decide what he likes the best. Well, he is just taken to hunting. And I think part of that's because we brought him when most people would have said, you know what, you're going to stay with grandma. We kind of toughed it out. At 1.5 years, we brought him out turkey hunting. And I told Ben, I said, he's going to be great. We don't even need a blind. Well, we get out there, first turkey hunt he's on, and he's been eating Cheetos, so he's in a good mood. And he's sitting there, and we get a turkey goblin. And all of a sudden, Jack starts howling like a coyote. Now, he's 1.5 years, and he's going, howl. And as soon as he does that, that turkey shock gobbles. And I'm trying to make him stop. Ben's not very happy, and I'm putting a sucker in his mouth, trying to make him be quiet, and he ends up spooking the turkey off. Then he was tired, needs a nap, so we just went home. But we brought him out later, got a turkey, and he just had so much fun. So, we just started bringing him every year with us, and turkey hunting's kind of been his thing. So when he got a little bit older, we took him out for his first hunt, and he sat and practiced for months getting ready for it. Because when they're young, he doesn't know his left from his right, so we're teaching him those kind of things. We're teaching him, we got him a little Winchester 410, a single shot. We'd bring him out to the range. He'd practice. We'd actually put turkey footage on the TV and have him just practice following the head, doing all the things. And he went out and he got a turkey that first year. And of all the hunts I've ever done, of all the places, It was absolutely the most memorable hunt I've ever been a part of. And he's killed 3 turkeys now already, 6, and he's like pretty much thinks he's the turkey expert. In fact, the guys from Barstool Sports came out and did a video with him because they said he's the turkey expert. They wanted him to teach Francis Ellis how to turkey hunt. So Jax did this whole thing about being an instructor, taught him the anatomy, had him shoot, and he's so proud of it. But in my mind, not only is that fun to do, but it's getting him prepared for teaching other kids, because I really believe word of mouth within kids, it's the best way to get more kids involved.
100%. Oh, yeah, it's so great. I love everything about that. Yeah. And don't think that he doesn't see what you're doing and that rubs off. As a parent, you don't realize how much influence you have just doing what you do when you're not in teaching moments. They pay attention to everything. And, I'm sure your personality has a lot to do with why he is who he is. So I just kind of love following the Jax monologues as he gets older. So that's great.
And they are hilarious. I'll just ask him random questions and he'll go on. And I told my mom, I said, I have never seen a kid like him. She goes, I have. You. She goes, I just don't have videos of you. But that's what you were like. So it's fun.
I love that. So something we have in common, Winchester partners, going on 15 years or more for you. Talk a little bit about what it's like to be an ambassador for Winchester and to be part of that whole brand, that team. What's that like?
It's probably one of the, it almost gives me goosebumps thinking about it, knowing that I've been a part of such an iconic brand for so long. In fact, my grandfather was probably the biggest lover of Winchester you could ever imagine. And if he were alive today, to know that, his granddaughter was working with Winchester, I just can't even imagine how proud he'd be. But it's so fun because I get to go out there and I get to, test out some new things and be a part of it and send feedback back. And I'm just always so proud to be an ambassador for a company like Winchester, because they're always trying to innovate and come up with, new things to try in the field. And I love taking it like the 400 Legend. I brought it to Alberta, shot a monster mule deer and whitetail. And yes, I was proud that they were huge deer, but I was almost more proud to be able to text those pictures back to Winchester and be like, you guys have knocked it out of the park here. This is amazing. People are going to be blown away at what this straight wall cartridge can do. And, I think that's been so fun for me to be a part of that along the way, whether it was Deer Season XP, the 350 Legend, the 400 Legend, you name it. Being on that forefront is just such an amazing experience.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think that's one of the privileges. And once you're part of the family at Winchester, you just don't leave. I mean, it's just one of those brands. You don't leave. And they create such a culture and a family environment where you never want to leave. And the continued innovation that they have, and like you said, the 350 and the 400 Legend, and the list goes on. And you've been a part of some of the biggest in the last 15 years, all the way back to Longbeard XR and Deer Season XP and all that. You were part of those launches. For us too. You were part of the story. And I think when you look at time and how Winchester has been, 15, they're over 16 decades, they've been a part of this culture in America. I think for me, it is so much of a privilege to be able to be part of that story. And yes, we're now in the present. You're part of the 400 Legend launch or the 350 Legend launch or the 6.8 Western launch. But in 40 or 50 years, it's going to be the 308 or it's going to be the 270. You were part of that caliber in its birth into this world. And I think it's a super unique place to be. And I think that's just one of the things that Winchester brings to the table that, you just don't get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it's so fun to go and try to capture amazing footage of it too. So that way, when others get to see it, they're like, it's almost jaw-dropping footage. And to me, I love hunting, but I love capturing those great videos as well. And it's because of my love of trying to share it with others. I mean, that's kind of my number one thing. I've always wanted to be a hunter, but now it's more than anything sharing that passion with others and kind of getting it stirred up in them and bringing new people on. And I think that's one of the things Winchester has done so well is, just tried to make it where, if a deer hunter walks into a store, make it really simple for them, whatever it may be. I love that. And I think we're just such a welcoming community and a family community. I think it's really, really helpful.
Do you remember how the relationship got kicked off with Winchester in the beginning?
Yeah, I do. I was actually on a hunt. I had done some extra work like on the side where Orion would hire me and I'd go do one hunt for Winchester Legends. And I was on a hunt with Mike Stock and it was not the best hunt I've ever been on, but we were having a wonderful time. He's a great guy and he's an engineer there, does different various jobs. That's a good thing. You always have kind of the same people that maybe get promoted along the way, but there's not much turnover there at all. So you kind of really form relationships. And I remember showing him some of the footage on my laptop and telling him, I'm working my butt off to try to make my own series. He's like, this is great. Let me see what I can do to help you. And it just kind of started the relationship. And, I still get to see Mike all the time. I work with Jason all the time. For all these years, I've had those same people and you get to know their families and everything about them. And again, I think that's what makes it so special is some companies, they've constantly got turnover. You might have a new person every 2 years that you're working with. It's just so different. And I think it shows you a lot about the culture and what an amazing company they are too.
100%. And going back, if there was what has been your favorite product launch that you've been a part of with them? We've mentioned Longbeard XR, Deer Season XP, 350, the 400. What's the one that you look back and say, wow, that one I think really changed things?
I think it was the 350 Legend. And the reason why is I come from a state where in Minnesota, we were in a slug zone. That's what we had to use. And Illinois, where I do a lot of hunting, Iowa, Ohio, you got all these places that I've always been shotgun slug or maybe muzzleloader. Well, as a 12-year-old kid, I've always been feeling like if you give a kid a 12 gauge or even a 20 gauge shotgun slug, it's not the most enjoyable to shoot. So when I saw these states changing the regulations to allow straight wall cartridges and then see what Winchester has done to give you so much out of a straight wall cartridge, to me, that was the most mind blowing. And it's probably what I got the most response from, where people are like, I need this right now. If I can set, and I can use a 350 Legend versus a shotgun slug, I'm going to take that 350. And for kids, it's got such little recoil. We use it in places all the time where rifles are legal just because it has such great knockdown power and such little recoil. So I feel like when we're trying to bring new people into the community, the two things people are always afraid of is recoil and the sound. And now you can put suppressors on to quiet it down a little bit. You can shoot something like a 350 Legend and have such little recoil that people are like, this is fun to shoot. Yes, let's do this more. And it's super effective. So to me, that has been probably the most impressive launch I've ever seen.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I remember when we were in some of these early conversations and, under contract, we can't say anything, but, they were talking about how to tell the story of the 350 Legend and how it's how they're going to launch it and when they're going to launch it. And I remember thinking, we're from Michigan. A lot of our state is only slug or straight wall cartridge, and the 450 Bushmaster is really all that was out there. And I remember thinking and telling Jason, and they know this already, but I said, man, this is going to be huge in our state because we are very limited in the southern part of Michigan and really where a lot of the giant bucks live. They're shooting slugs. So the 350, I think, really changed the game and for our state in particular and for other states. So, and to be a part of that launch, that was a big one. And that's something that I think, I'm proud of, really getting that story and telling that story. That was a fun one. That was a fun one. You had some great hunts that year with 350, some incredible hunts. I get thinking about this and when you look at your career and everything that you've done in 18 years, what is you might not be able to pinpoint it, but what is one of the things you're the most proud of?
Probably one of the hunts I actually did for Winchester Legends. They sent me to South Dakota to do a hunt, and I shot a beautiful buck. It's actually behind me on my wall. But the game warden stopped in, and he's now my husband. So I would say, out of all of the things that I've done, that was probably the most amazing hunt I could ever do. And who would think that that's how things work out? But one of the things I feel is, as hunters, not only do we get to see beautiful places, but we get to meet such amazing people. And over the years, I believe I have met some of the best people on earth through hunting and through our lifestyle, and people that I keep in touch with. A lot of the places I go back because I love the people so much. And I think it's a testament to, our entire community and what a great group of people we have. And so not only am I forever thankful to Winchester for having my show, but I was actually sent here to South Dakota on one of their hunts. So I don't think you could get any better than that.
Jeez, no one can top that story. That's incredible. That's incredible. So tech question here. What's your favorite rifle ammo combo for Midwestern whitetails?
A lot of what I use is I'll use a Winchester XPR. And a lot of times if something new maybe isn't coming out, I shoot a 300 Win Mag. I absolutely love it. The thing is it's just such an effective round combination, and you can shoot various distances. You have so much knockdown power. It's just, I know the ballistics, I know everything about it. So that's kind of always been my go-to. And it's not something I would necessarily give my mom. Usually if my mom, or I even bring my grandma sometimes, I'll give them a 270 or, maybe even a 350 Legend. But for me, that 300 Win Mag, it's just hard to beat, in my opinion.
So recently, 2 weeks ago, right? You went moose hunting. Is that what you used, the 300 Win Mag?
Yep, in Expedition Big Game. So they actually came out. There's a cool moose on the box, and it's just a great round. And one of the things you have to know about moose is they are a really tough animal. And if you've ever had a pack of moose, you know how important it is to drop that moose right where he is or very close proximity. Because if you don't and they get back in there, it's a disaster you're talking potentially 2 days worth of work to get the moose to shore. So we usually hunt out of a boat. We get off, we get on shore, and then we call them down. And this year, we actually called this bull from probably 110 yards in the really thick stuff. I could have probably taken a shot there, but I'm someone where I want to get better footage. You could just barely see him. I said, let's see if we can bring him down to the shore. And we did. We brought him right to 30 yards, right over my shoulder. My cameraman, my husband were both filming, and I shot this moose right there. And I actually put 2 in him, and he drops, 10 yards from shore. There is nothing better by having that good ammo, dropping that big bull right there. We didn't even have to pack him. We had a little sled, and we just pulled it like 8 yards into the boat. The meat went, and we had it done in several hours. So I think not only for the ethical, quick kill of an animal, but also for your own back, it's really important when you're moose hunting. And anyone who's packed moose, they know that is absolutely true.
You know it. And I'll never forget the first year we hunted moose. We were up in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. We were on a river, and our mentor, our moose hunting mentor, in float drag mentor, he's like, "Hey, call them from camp. They'll come into camp. Don't chase them. You go a half mile off the river and you kill a big moose." He's like, "That's days of work," and it took a hot second because we were kind of chasing some sign and glassing. And then finally we said, you know what? We had a couple days left. Let's just call them into camp. Let's just see if we can get moose in. And by God, a 64-inch bull came across the river and it right into our freaking camp. And it's one of those things where you just don't believe it until you see it. And then when we didn't have to pack, we literally cape quartered and put that moose into a raft 20 yards from where it died. But we've also been a half mile in, and it is a big chore. There's no question. So, okay, so 22-year-old Melissa in 2006, what would you tell her that you know now? What advice would you give Melissa back then from everything that you've learned if you could take 5 minutes and talk to her back then?
Probably just to get more sleep, work less. But it's one of those challenges. I actually thought I was narcoleptic for many years. My cameraman will be the first to tell you. I would sit at a dinner table and I'd just like fall asleep if people quit talking for a second because I was working nonstop, night, day, whatever, hunting. But I think sometimes if you can just almost just set aside time where, you have to let your body rest, because even as an editor, when you're super tired, you're going backwards. You got to always be moving left to right. And when you're tired, you're messing more up and it's taking longer. So I think that's one of the things I've learned is to be mentally sharp. You have to have somewhat of enough rest. I still probably don't sleep enough. I wish I could get by on like 3 hours of sleep. I can't. I'm getting too old for that. No. But I think that's something I would say is, sometimes you really do have to like sit back and look for efficiencies. Take that time. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard right now. I feel like sometimes I need to like take a 4 or 5 day break and just think about ways I can make things smoother, things that I'm wasting too much time on. But we're always so busy that you don't take the time to do that. And you try to make it work as you go. But I think there are a lot of benefits to that. And again, it's about balance. I still to this day, I think it's the most challenging part of any career is finding the balance. I feel like a really good mom or a really good hunter or a good editor. It's hard to be good at all of them all the time. So you kind of have to pick your battles.
Last question for you, and this question varies with who's answering it, but what does living a Winchester life mean to you? What's that when you think of a Winchester life? What's living the Winchester life to you mean?
To me, it means everything about trying to make our community grow, whether that's through your own family, whether it's community members. I feel like we need to bring as many people into this Winchester life and show them, because I think there's people out there who maybe weren't raised like I was, who have been a part of the hunting community. So I feel like it's my job to show others how amazing this is, whether you're doing it just for clean protein for your family, or you're doing it to get closer to nature or to get your kids away from electronics. It doesn't really matter why. I just feel like living that Winchester life encompasses getting to know nature, learning where your food comes from, going out, learning to hunt, learning to shoot, and bringing your whole family around it. And if you don't have family yet, bring someone in from the community. Find people to take along with you. And I think you'll find it so rewarding. My best hunts have not been hunts I've done. It's bringing others along. So to me, that's what it really means.
Melissa the Unicorn Bachman, first ever guest on Winchester Life Podcast. Thank you so much for spending time in the middle of October and chatting with us.
Well, thank you very much. I bet the deer appreciate me not being in the woods right now.
I'm sure they do. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
This portion of the Winchester Life Podcast has been brought to you by Winchester Safes. Built with reliability and dependability, Winchester Safes offers proven security for your memories, possessions, and most importantly, your peace of mind. Visit winchestersafes.com to learn more. White Flyer Targets. For more than 130 years, White Flyer has provided the highest quality clay target for trap, skeet, and sporting clays. White Flyer, America's best. Birchwood Casey. Since 1948, serious shooters, avid collectors, and professional gunsmiths have relied on Birchwood Casey for shooting and gun care products that have stood the test of time. To learn more, visit birchwoodcasey.com. This portion of the Winchester Life Podcast is brought to you by Ducks Unlimited. Established in 1937 with the singular mission of conserving wetlands and grasslands for North America's waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited conserves, restores, and manages wetlands and associated habitats. 43 species of waterfowl call this continent home, requiring diverse and abundant wetlands for their populations to thrive. Ducks Unlimited and their partners have contributed to healthy duck populations in all 50 states through millions of acres of habitat restoration, enhancements, and protection. Visit their website at ducks.org to join and learn more. And now back to the show. So this week on our Ammo 101 segment, we have with us Ben Frank from Winchester Ammunition to talk a little bit about the latest and greatest from the world of Winchester. Ben, welcome to the show. And what are we chatting about today?
Well, let's talk a little bit about deer season XP. Not necessarily new for, say, 2025. Actually, it's the 10-year anniversary coming up in 2025. But maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the products in deer season, just given that it's its 10-year anniversary there and its birthday.
Sure. From a deer season XP perspective, the 350 and the 400 Legend is obviously kind of some of the newer offerings that you have under the deer season XP line. Talk a little bit about what makes the 350 and the 400, I guess, so unique and different.
Yeah. So I'll rewind just a little bit on the deer season piece. I think we have like 19 different calibers that are in deer season now. It is a wide range from 223 to 300 Win Mag, pretty much everything. We've actually started adding some bullet weights to some of those as well that historically maybe only had one weight.
Yeah.
But when you talk about 350 and 400, those two really kind of were birthed through these straight wall states that like Ohio, like Michigan, where you guys are at, even Illinois now, Iowa, where historically they were slug states. They were given the opportunity to shoot these straight walls, which working with a lot of the DNR folks, whenever we did 350, you kind of get into their head a little bit about where that's coming from. And a lot of that has to do with just how far those bullets will travel. Right. So like historically slugs or some of the other cartridges that were available, if you're sitting in a ground blind and you shoot it straight out at a deer, that bullet's probably going to be in the dirt by 400 yards-ish. Well, these straight wall cartridges are kind of similar to that. They're not really designed for overly long range hunting, right?
Yeah,
when you look at 350 and 400, you're going to be shooting 200 to 250 yards usually max. And that's probably really what they're designed in terms of the bullets to be able to effectively take deer. But with the lack of recoil that you see with these things and just the accuracy that you get and just how much fun they are to shoot, we've seen 350 Legend take off throughout the country. Like not just in these straight walk states. It's every state.
And the cool part about, the story for us, working with you guys on launching and telling the story of the 350 launch and the 400 Legend launch, that to us is probably some of the more memorable launches that we had. And I remember in that 350 camp in Kansas, that was one of the first times I think we met, actually. You came down and it was a wild camp. We had like rain, we had thunder, we had snowstorms, we got flooded out. It was wild. And you ended up shooting a great buck in Kansas at our camp with 350 Legend. And we had a couple other guys in camp that also took deer. In just seeing, and me personally knowing that in Michigan, in our southern part of the Lower Peninsula, it's shotgun only. I knew that the 350 would be huge because, when we started shooting it and you guys tested it and we integrated it into our Kansas camp. When obviously in Kansas, you can shoot a rifle there, and you can, it's a long flat, where we were is long flat, big open country. But that 350, it was a game changer for us, especially in the state of Michigan. And when that hit the shelves, and the success, you just kept hearing about success. And still to this day, I get texts from my buddies that are looking to get into 350. It's still happening. It didn't just happen when it was launched. It's still going on to this day. So the 350 Legend, talk a little bit about that first year and what you guys kind of got from the feedback of the consumer.
Well, I'll say as an ammo manufacturer, whenever you come out with a new cartridge, it can be some of the most like gut punching type scenarios because you're always going to have all these people asking you, why are you doing this? Why aren't you making this instead of that? A lot of times it's very, very negative, right? Yeah. So we got a lot of that with 350. A lot of it was just, hey, it's not going to stack up to those claims, and we don't feel like we need this, and why are you doing this? Well, all the while all that kind of happens, because the reason why we do these things, yes, we know that that stuff's going to happen. Like, it's obviously, as a person, who takes pride in our company and doing these things, you don't like hearing those things. But the reality is you're going to, because just a lot of people aren't going to always understand it or get it. And I understand that.
Right.
But the people who needed the 350 Legend, they totally got it, right? Like, those folks very quickly, and in addition to that, which one thing we haven't mentioned, there's a ton of bolt guns out there, but there's also a lot of MSR AR style rifles that have been chambered for 350. And that was huge, because people were able to go out there and build their own rifles and get that out there, and maybe build a rifle for their kid, so that the first deer they were ever able to take was with a 350 Legend. And that's what we really were, watching and leaning on. And we could see that continuing to grow with people and continuing to see that success. Like you said, thankfully I got to be one of the first ones to shoot a deer with a 350. Melissa Bachman might argue that she got the first one. I don't know. Maybe I did. It doesn't really matter at this point, but it's still pretty cool to talk about. Right.
Yeah.
But so many people got their first deer, if you think about that, with a 350 Legend, and you start thinking about stories, right? And think about memories, and you think about tradition, and the 350 is going to be in the minds of a lot of these, first time hunters and shooters, that's the first animal, that they ever took was with a 350 Legend, which is pretty awesome. And not just because it's available, but because it works so darn well. I mean, in terms of a whitetail cartridge with next to no recoil, I mean, it's so accurate. I mean, for people who are used to shooting slugs, and for somebody who's been in the shot shell industry for over 20 years, I can tell you that we cannot make slugs as accurate as we can make 350 Legend ammo. It's just not possible. You might have a shotgun that shoots pretty well from time to time, but lot after lot, time after time, brand after brand, whether it's Winchester making it or someone else, you are not going to have that kind of accuracy with slugs that you're going to have with 350 over and over again. So it's pretty awesome.
So a few years later, actually a couple of years ago, the 400 Legend kind of made its way to the front of the line, and I think because of the 350 success, there is that extended range that I think was like, okay, what could we do something and push it to the next level? So talk about a little bit about what the thought process was with the 400 Legend.
Yeah, so I liken it to folks that are in states that can shoot whatever they want, right? So like, I'm in Illinois, so I can't, but I go to other places throughout the country from time to time. So I have a 6.5 Creedmoor, I have a 30-06, I got a 270, I got other ones too. And it's like, the more I have, it's kind of like it gives me options, right? It gives me options when I go to the store if I can't find one. Well, on those straight wall states, your options are still pretty limited. The 450 Bushmaster was out there. It's popular. You can still shoot slugs, yeah, but beyond that, you got the 350, and then there's maybe, like, depend upon state, some of them can use 45-70. Some of them you might use a pistol cartridge that's really not designed for deer hunting, but you're kind of jamming it into that. So it's like, let's give them another option, right? So it's like, and we also got feedback that, hey, I'd like to have a little more energy, a little heavier bullet, maybe more of a blood trail. You're going to get that whenever you're punching a bigger, heavier bullet through an animal. And that's really where 400 Legend comes in. And again, we make 450 Bushmaster as well, but you're talking the way we were able to build those bullets from the ground up, we're getting energy that's comparable to 450 Bushmaster, but with even less recoil. So it's also going to be, and in the first season or two here, it's really shown that it works very well. It's living up to what we're saying there, which is, I'd say it's an in between the 350 and 450, but really it's kind of, pushing closer to that 450 Bushmaster performance.
Yeah. Ben, that's 350, 400 Legend. Again, you guys create and innovate with purpose, and that's what I've always loved about when you guys come out with something. There's a reason for it, and there's a void that's being filled. And for you guys, and you said it best, the first deer that someone is taking it. A lot of times it's in the old days, it was a 30-30, right? Oh, I have my first 30-30. And a lot of these states, it's 350 legend for these younger shooters. So it's important. It always has been for you guys to be a part of the fabric and the story and the traditions of deer season. So, 350 and 400 legend just kind of reinforce that. So appreciate you taking the time to kind of fill us in a little bit more.
Well, thanks a lot, Jason.
The Winchester Life Podcast is brought to you by Winchester Ammunition, Winchester Repeating Arms, Winchester Safes, White Flyer Targets, Folds of Honor, Birchwood Casey, Walkers, Winchester Pet, and Winchester Optics. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this week's show. Please make sure you click the follow button on your podcast apps so you never miss a new episode. This episode was produced by Aaron Cox and Jason Gilbertson, engineered by Jason Freer, directed by Chad Andrus, written and edited by Jason Brown, with behind-the-scenes photography by Kelsey Myers. I'm Jason Brown, and you've been listening to the Winchester Life Podcast. See you next time.